Have you seen Turning Red yet? I sure hope so if you're watching this video because obviously, spoilers alert. Turning Red is a 3D animated coming-of-age film produced by Pixar, but the strings are being pulled by Disney. It's Domee Shi's directorial debut. You might recognize her directing style from the short film Bao that came out in 2018, which won an Academy Award for the Best Animated Short Film at the 2019 Oscars. She's the first woman and woman of color to solo direct a Pixar film in its 36-year history. Better late than never, I guess. She actually started out her career as a storyboard artist intern at Pixar, and now she's directed this gem. If that isn't inspiring to all you animation hopefuls out there, then I don't know what is. Turning Red is also the first Pixar film to have a fully female-led creative team. Yes, bitches! So anyway, it's set in Canada in 2002. Our protagonist May is 13, experiencing changes and stresses that come with growing up and dealing with her overbearing and really strict mom. And one night she turns into a red panda, which is a metaphor for puberty and those emotional and physical and hormonal changes that come with it. But also it's a magical blessing turned cursed from her ancestor. The panda transformation gets triggered whenever she's in a highly emotional state, so whether it's anxiety, fear, anger, it happens and she has to learn to control it. We get a great intro to her personality when she straight away breaks the fourth wall and speaks directly to the audience in the opening scene, which is very typical of the media of that era, early 2000s. They did that a lot, but I don't think I've ever seen it done in a Disney or Pixar movie. So that was a really unique and nostalgic way for them to start off the film. To be honest, May kind of comes off as a little bit annoying at first, but you do warm up to her fast, and really, it's very typical and believable of that age, those precocious 13-year-old girls. She is a bit cringy and she is a bit brash, but that just lends more to the believability of her character. And her friends are the bond that sort of smooths May's sometimes annoying personality, because her friends are literally perfection in terms of their personalities, their acting, as well as their character design. Priya, with her deadpan face and delivery and the conservation of energy in her movements, her actions are very limited to just what is necessary, which is reflective of her personality. She doesn't move or speak or express anything unnecessarily. Then you have Abby, who is a constant ball of thrumming energy. You can feel it when you watch her on screen. Her movements are erratic, chaotic, aggressive. And then there's Miriam, who's calmer, gentler, much more reserved than Abby, of course, but still very expressive and a little bit awkward, but very endearing. The varieties in their body shapes, their silhouettes and designs is also awesome. Each character is distinctive and lovable in their own very different ways, and they're not just the cookie-cutter standard usual Pixar or Disney 3D female character design shape, which is usually thin, especially when it comes to any woman who's not a maternal character, big-eyed and pointy-chinned, and they end up being pretty generic. But in Turning Red, each character is different and unique, and I love the variety and appeal and the special little touches in their designs that reflect their personalities and interests. It's a more realistic representation of young girls, and it's way more endearing and relatable to me. They didn't design the girls to be attractive, although they are still visually appealing. But you know, attractiveness and visual appeal are not the same thing. I like that they designed them as just young girls. They weren't made to be pretty and perfect. They're just young girls existing. This has been spoken about before in terms of female character designs, especially with Pixar and Disney, and the issues with how they end up looking quite generic because they have a very narrow frame of what a female should look like to be attractive for the audience. It's even been blatantly referenced that animators still try to keep the female characters pretty and how it's actually a struggle when they're feeling extreme emotions. Lino da Silva, the head animator on Frozen, caused a bit of a stir when he said this in an interview. Historically speaking, animating female characters are really difficult because they have to go through these ranges of emotions. You have to keep them pretty and you can get them off model very quickly. So having a film with two hero female characters was really tough, and having them both in the scene and looking very different if they're echoing the same expression. That Elsa is looking angry looks different from Anna being angry. Bruh, they're supposed to be two different people. I mean, I know they're sisters, so they might have similar features, but they're not twins. You shouldn't be struggling to have them looking different when they both have a similar expression on their face. And obviously, it's not the animators' fault. The animators didn't do the character designs. The animators are not, the people at the top who are approving or not approving character designs and stuff. So I'm definitely not blaming the animators or anything like that. But that is a problem, that you struggle to have your female characters looking different because they have to fit into such narrow parameters of beauty and look pretty at all times. And might I also mention that these parameters of beauty are also very westernized parameters. And I know that Disney and Pixar have been trying to sort of spread their wings and diversify and have a bit more representation of other ethnicities and races, which is great, but they still have a long way to go. But you should be able to animate a female character emoting, feeling things, being sad, being angry, and not have to worry about them looking pretty the whole time. So much so that it actually, becomes a challenge to animate them because they have to be attractive at all times. And that's what I love so much about Turning Red. I'm not commenting on the attractiveness or unattractiveness of the characters because that has no bearing. They're just young girls living their lives. They're very visually appealing, their designs are lovely to look at, but their sexual attractiveness was not a factor. They just designed a group of young friends that are all fun and quirky and unique and very visually appealing, but very different each in their own ways. As a whole, the visual style is very cute and soft, with the characters being quite rounded and friendly looking, and a nice bright color palette, mostly in complementary colors. The characters are similar to chibi anime style, really cute and chunky and colorful with occasional pops of shiny and glittery effects and dreamlike sequences. It's all really appealing. It's a welcoming style and it makes you feel like you're getting a warm hug from your BFF. May is generally wearing red or warmer hues and her mom wears a bluish green, which are completely opposite colors on the color wheel and sort of illustrates that antagonistic element between them, that sort of battle, because it's also reflected in their colors that they're represented by. May's room is also a very cool green because her mom has had a hand in controlling every aspect of her life, even her private space, which should reflect her own personality rather than her mom's. But it lets you see how much control her mom has over her, even in her personal space. You can see how ordered her bedroom is, like her mom has been in there tidying it. But when she crawls under her bed, that's her domain. It's untouched by her mom, and it's lit with May's coloring. She feels safe there, and it's really messy, just like a teenage girl's private space would usually be. When May's at school and she's surrounded by her friends and a little more comfortable and she feels more able to be herself, it's a bit of a safer space maybe. The hues and tones around her are a lot warmer. Even when things are green, like with Miriam's clothes, it's a yellower green than her mom's tones, showing that she feels safe here. It's not an antagonistic color, it's a complementary color. Stylistically, there are very strong anime influences, which I love. I love anime and I love how it was incorporated into the designs pretty much seamlessly, as well as the animation. It's really awesome that 3D animation media is starting to get a little bit more experimental in terms of their design and their styles. For a while, 3D films from Disney and Pixar were a little bit generic. They all kind of looked the same, which I know a lot of people do like. I guess they feel comfortable with that, and I know there have been complaints about the fact that Disney and Pixar are changing styles a little bit too much and they're losing their signature style, but I like it. I like to experiment. I like to see how far we can push animation, as a medium of art. And I think it's great that they're finally getting some diversity into their trademark aesthetic. Something else reminiscent of anime is the actual animation itself, not just the look and feel. They use quite snappy and exaggerated movements and long holds. Now, a lot of you will know that anime often makes use of this technique to save on budget, because with long holds and snappy movements, you have less drawings, which means you can have a tighter turnaround times and less budget. But because that became such a common treatment for anime, it's now a style indicator. So that's what makes Turning Red so reminiscent of anime. They didn't make that choice for budgetary reasons. They made that choice to give it a more anime feel in the animation. It's a deliberate artistic treatment that they chose. So I personally love the anime influence here, and I think a lot of other anime fans will too. They'll recognize it straight away. And it's really nostalgic, especially of the anime that we were watching at the time, like Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball. And this is a spoiler, but I really like it at the end. For me, it seemed like May's mom, when she turned into her own panda, she was almost like a Super Saiyan panda because of how her hair stood up in those pointy clumps, up against gravity and stuff. I don't know, Super Saiyan panda, that was really, really cool to me. I don't know if it was supposed to be like that, but that's how it looked to me. The character designs also bear a lot of anime influence, especially the bean-like mouth shapes and sizes, the expressions, the sparkly eyes they get when they see the floofy panda or Four Town, the dreamlike cutscenes, stuff like when the light shines off their glasses. It's all very anime and all very awesome to see so well incorporated and married with the 3D animation and realistic touches like with the texturing and lighting. It's difficult to get such different styles, like the simplistic appeal of anime and the designs that typically only work in 2D, to work so well with the generally more complex and detailed 3D, with its rules for what design will work in a 3D space, and then marry them together, and they did a brilliant job in this movie. They also incorporated some effects that are very 2D in style, like these sparkles here in this mountain scene, and the speed lines, and this poof of cloud here in the softball scene. Of course, smear frames are often used in 3D, as well as particle effects like these stars, But it's the treatment that's making them look so 2D in a 3D world, and the exaggeration of them that gives it that anime/2D cartoony effect. The animation, of course, is beautiful, and I already mentioned the very particular ways the characters move, in terms of their own personalities. But I particularly love how the kids are still a little bit clumsy, a little bit ungainly in their movements. They don't have these perfectly plotted out, wonderfully controlled animation movements like a lot of animation does have. It's very typical of that age because kids at that age are still very clumsy, and I love how they brought that through in the animation. It's very realistic to me. Apart from Priya, of course, but that's not her vibe, and she does seem to be a little bit more physically mature than her friend, so that would explain why she's a bit less clumsy than them. But essentially they move like kids, which they are, and I love that goofy, energetic portrayal of these clumsy kids just having fun, living their best lives. There were so many scenes that I found really endearing and relatable and also heart-wrenching. And one that I felt a lot was the one scene where May is upstairs in her room in the morning. Her parents had just found out the night before about the little issue she's dealing with, and now she's woken up and she's trying to get rid of the panda parts that are sort of materializing on her body. So it starts out innocuously enough. We've got this idyllic opening onto the street outside the temple. It's beautiful, actually. People walking past on this bright new morning, beautiful pink blossoms on the trees. We then cut to the sign saying the temple is closed due to a family emergency, which is our first omen that actually all is not well. And then we hear the high-pitched whine of the vacuum cleaner. We cut to a shot of Ming's feet walking along the hallways, pushing the vacuum that's sucking up copious amounts of red hair, basically starting to clean up the damage and mess that May caused when she was a panda and running around the house in a panic the day before. And then we hear these thumps, and the whole house is shaking with each thump, and we hear these screams of rage and pain, and dust is literally falling from the ceiling. And you can see the tension in the line of Ming's body and her wide-eyed facial expression and tense jaw, splayed out fingers. The dad is also tense and wide-eyed, and Ming runs to grab a picture falling off the wall. And we cut closer to an over-the-shoulder shot to see her looking at this picture of May as a little girl, smiling and happy and unburdened before all this shit hit the fan, basically. We get a feeling of Ming's perspective from this over-the-shoulder angle, but it's not a POV shot because we need to relate it to how Ming must be feeling about seeing her daughter going through this. The concern and pain she must feel, knowing her little girl, who was once so carefree and sweet, is now turning into a young woman and going through so much unhappiness that Ming can't really help her with. She just has to kind of get through it on her own. She can't protect her little girl anymore like she used to be able to. Ming gently places the picture back on the wall and looks back at Jin with this over-the-shoulder shot with both of them in the frame to show that they're in this thing together, both feeling pain for their child, and they share a look of concern, and we have a moving hold there for a second for the concern in his face to really have an impact. So we know that her parents are suffering too. They're so concerned for their little girl, seeing what she's going through but not being able to do much to help except to just be there for her. Then we cut upstairs to May, where she's basically beating herself up to try and suppress the parts of the red panda that keep manifesting on her body. It's basically a form of self-harm. She just absolutely hates this part of her so much that she's hurting herself, violently throwing herself against the walls and floor to get rid of it. I think that a lot of young people, young teenagers, can relate to those feelings of self-loathing when you literally punish yourself for the things you hate so much about yourself. There's this contrast between the fluffy, cute, soft-looking pink clouds that accompany her transformation and the violence with which she's trying to squash it, and it makes it that much more jarring and sad. It's a beautiful part of herself that she should be learning to accept and live in harmony with. A part of her that she just needs to learn to manage, but she just hates it too much to see that. The camera in this scene upstairs has a dynamic, handheld quality, following her movements and giving the scene an off-kilter and chaotic feeling. It's similar to how fight scenes are shot too, avoiding having a locked-off camera so the scene feels more violent, like there's more energy and tension and chaos. So we feel a bit of the disorientation that she feels throwing herself around the room like that. Here we come at it from a low angle while she's above us. You can see the anger and upset on her face with her gritted teeth and lowered eyebrows, and she throws herself down off the bed onto the floor in this really nice arc. She pushes off both feet to jump, and then her feet offset so she's got this nice clear silhouette. Then you see the first impact as she hits the floor on her arm, and everything else is slightly offset as her hips and shoulder and one foot hit the floor. Her head squashes to exaggerate that impact, and then the other foot and the hand that had been holding her paw hit a moment after that, and her whole body also bounces back up with the rebound. There's a lot of squash and stretch used throughout the film. It adds to the cartoony, anime-ish, over-exaggerated feeling. Here's another example where she's pulling her ears and there's quite a lot of stretch, and extreme smear frames here as well to exaggerate the speed and power she's putting behind this movement. showing she's not holding back, she's really hurting herself. Then she falls to the floor, and as she pushes herself up, you can see the strain on her arms as they shake as she crawls forward and then curls up in a little ball, constantly adjusting her position to try and fold up into as small of a ball as possible to try and somehow protect herself from herself and block out what's happening to her. And we see her now from this high angle, looking down at her alone in this bare, big room full of scratches and destruction. And it really drives home the battle she's busy fighting against herself. And she's doing it all alone right now. This moment of loneliness and isolation is perfectly offset by what happens next when her friends show up. And that contrast between this scene and the next is what really gives it such a poignant impact and drives home how important her friends are and how important it is to have people that will support you and have your back, whether you're a human girl or a giant mystical red panda. Another really nice touch in the animation is when May is a panda, she has this physical reaction to surprises or being startled, which is actually a defense mechanism typical to red pandas. They stand on their back legs and raise their arms to appear bigger to attackers, and you see her doing it in some of the shots. This attention to detail in the animation gives it a lot of depth and realism. Even though it's so cartoonish, it's still really convincing. I also need to give May's dad, Jin, a special mention because I just love the character. He's so sweet, so supportive of May, and loves every part of her, including the panda. Even telling her when she was still battling with accepting it that red is a lucky color. It's so sweet and so beautiful for a dad to be so loving and supportive. He's trying to let her know without being overbearing about it that she should accept and love all her parts. I love that we're starting to get out of narrow gender stereotypes in media, especially kids media. He cooks, wears a flowery apron in the kitchen, doesn't hide his admiration for his wife, and he's just so gentle and sweet, and I find his character really endearing. Also, the scene when we first get introduced to him and he's cooking is just fabulous, and also very anime in the exaggeration and care put into the shots. The close-ups and artistic treatment of the food, slow-mo moments, glistening rim lighting, and of course the shine on his glasses. It's just awesome. I know there have been, strangely, a lot of people who've said that they didn't find anything relatable in this movie, that it just wasn't something they could relate to at all, which to me is very strange because if you're a person who's ever been a kid, grown up, become a teenager, gone through puberty, had an overbearing parent or butted heads with their parent or tried to come to terms with themselves changing as they grow up, should be able to find something relatable in this movie. A protagonist shouldn't have to look like you or come from the same culture as you or have had a similar upbringing to you for you to be able to find something to relate to. That's just part of having empathy, surely. To me, Turning Red really captures the essence of what it feels like to be in this body that is changing in ways you didn't necessarily expect and you don't know how to handle, whether it's physically in the physical appearance of it or hormonally or just mentally how your brain changes as you grow up. I think that they really captured that feeling of chaos in that transition of your life from a child into becoming a teenager. You know, when you're a kid and you're like with your friends and you guys are just being dumb and uninhibited and you're all just in a silly, goofy mood, and then you have to go home and you have to be a completely different person in front of your parents. And also that feeling of dealing with your parents as you change as a person and still trying to live up to what they expect you to be or what you feel like they want you to be and who you truly are. So all in all, I think this was a really great movie. I loved the references, the throwbacks. It was really nostalgic for me. Loved the anime influences, the treatment, the look and feel. I love the style of animation that they chose. I think it all worked together really, really well. So let me know what you thought about it in the comments, if you loved it as much as I did or if you feel like it hit the mark for you. Maybe you genuinely did not find anything to relate to there. Maybe you just didn't like the style. I know a lot of people didn't. Let me know in the comments what you think. It's always interesting to know other people's opinions. Thank you as always to my patrons for all the support. Hello to my new patrons. Thanks for joining our little community over there. In case you didn't know, I do have a Patreon page where I share things like works in progresses, blog posts, useful things I come across online that might be helpful to people learning animation or practicing animation, as well as for some of my tiers, I do a monthly critique on a little animation clip that they send in. So join us if you feel like that's something that would float your boat or help you out. And thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you did like the video. It does help with the algorithm. Leave a comment, join the conversation. It's always good to meet new people online and hear different opinions. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any other videos. Thanks for watching, guys. Love ya. Bye.